Hi, Dr. P here to talk about two-player game design and specifically about how to avoid making puzzles rather than games. Games need uncertainty of some kind to avoid being puzzles. That is, something with an always correct solution. That's what a puzzle is. A game with an always correct solution is said to have a dominant strategy, and that is bad juju. You do not want that. That is a big flaw. Chess is a puzzle, but it's too hard for humans to solve, although we can solve subsets, chess problems. Tic-tac-toe is a puzzle. It's easy to solve. As you get older, and if you play tic-tac-toe, you gradually come to realize that it's always a draw if played properly, perfectly. In a puzzle, there is always a best move. If you play the best moves in tic-tac-toe, it's a draw. In a game, there often is no best move. And that's really the difference between games and puzzles. Now, a solution to avoiding puzzles, not necessarily the only one, but the typical solution is to incorporate uncertainty and possibly randomness into a game. I guess you could call that two solutions. You can have uncertainty without randomness. You can have randomness that becomes sufficiently predictable that it removes most of the uncertainty. So what exactly is the difference? Uncertainty comes from randomness, but also from hidden information and from unknown intentions of multiple players. Not just one opponent, but more than one opponent. Randomness comes from various random number generators, such as dice, cards, spinners, and so on. Again, randomness can be subject to probability, while uncertainty is not, unless the uncertainty comes from the randomness. There are two kinds of randomness: input randomness and output randomness. Input randomness comes before anyone has made a decision and affects everyone. It's more acceptable to those who don't like randomness. It still makes it a game, but you're less likely to offend certain players, let's say. Output randomness comes after you've made a decision and usually affects only one or two players. For example, the obvious thing in a war game is you move and then you roll dice to resolve the battle. Any kind of randomness takes the activity away from puzzle and toward game, again barring too much predictability. You can account for randomness probabilistically. Uncertainty comes from hidden information, and there's no hidden information in chess or checkers or Go or tic-tac-toe. Hidden information can include unidentified assets, assets of uncertain strength or capability, assets of uncertain location or allocation, and a lot more besides. Major uncertainty comes from players' intentions when there is more than one opponent. If there's one opponent, you can account for the player's intentions. So, two players without hidden information. Two-player games are hard to do without hidden information, even if you have dice rolls, because uncertainty can be calculated out, in this case uncertainty from randomness, in two-player games via game theory mixed strategies, at least theoretically. In other words, you assume your opponent is a perfect player and act accordingly. If the opponent is less than perfect, you'll do better than expected, maximizing your minimum gain. But because of the nature of game theory mixed strategies, there's still a probability involved. Your mixed strategy might have three different things, and you should do one 20% of the time, one 40% of the time, and another 40% of the time. That's how you play to get your maximize your minimum gain in the long run, although it might not work in that particular game. But it still makes it a game much more than a puzzle. Now I'm going to take the example of Duel Britannia. I devised Duel Britannia to be a two-player version of my game Britannia, which is a four-player version. And As with Britannia, there's nothing hidden because that's the tradition in Britannia-like games. But there's no uncertainty from having one opponent instead of 3 or more, as I've explained. So the only pure uncertainty is randomization. And there's lots of dice rolling in Britannia-like games than there is in Duel Britannia. Now, this can help make the game shorter because there's not much analysis paralysis involved. Analysis paralysis comes from looking for the best move. Well, if there isn't a best move, then as long as the players recognize that, they won't spend a lot of time trying to figure out the best move. Consider that the game chess has a clock in order to avoid becoming a very long game. You have 2 hours for 40 moves, I believe. Because otherwise people will constantly be looking for the best move, and theoretically a game could take days. So without uncertainty or randomness, and in 2-player games you don't get much uncertainty about the other player, then you have a puzzle, not a game. Thanks for listening.